India has decided how it will spend the money that it has over the next 1 year. But what about the verdict? Take a look at this report.
ये बजट फार्मर फ्रेंडली, कॉमन मैन फ्रेंडली, बिजनेस एनवायरनमेंट फ्रेंडली और साथ ही साथ डेवलपमेंट फ्रेंडली भी है.
That's the message the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party wants to send with India Budget 2018. That the government is concerned about you, the voter. And what's the harm in that? After all, India needs jobs. India has to improve the lives of its farmers. And India has to ensure the standard of living improves. India, after all, is poised to be the world's 5th largest economy very soon.
Indian economy is now a $2.5 trillion economy, 7th largest in the world. India is expected to become the 5th largest economy very soon.
But that's a mighty challenge and needs a lot of money and wealth generation. So the finance minister loosened the purse strings and set aside more than 14 lakh crore rupees, or more than $220 billion for rural infrastructure and supporting farmers.
For creation of livelihood and infrastructure in rural areas, a total amount to be spent by ministries will be rupees 14.34 lakh crores from extra budgetary and non-budgetary resources of rupees 11.98 lakh crores.
That, Mr. Jaitley says, will also create jobs. Seems like a win-win situation. Also in the budget is the most ambitious health insurance scheme ever attempted. But there's a catch. The more the government spends, the more the fiscal deficit widens. And investors, foreign investors, don't like that.
बजट में प्रस्तुत की गई नई योजना आयुष्मान भारत, इस आयुष्मान भारत योजना समाज के इन सभी वर्गों को, जिसको हम कहें दलित, पीड़ित, शोषित, वंचित, महिला, गरीब, निम्न गरीब, मध्यम वर्ग, इन सबको बीमारी की जो आफत आ जाती है उससे मुक्ति दिलाने की, उससे चिंता से मुक्ति दिलाने का एक बहुत बड़ा कदम है.
The FDI in India last fiscal was some $60 billion. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has invited businessmen to come and make in India. And it is their assessment that will decide if the money continues to flow into India.
I would say that in the last 4 years, this is the 3rd time that the goals have been delayed.
WION had earlier reported that the BJP will seek a political message from the budget. The party managed to retain the Prime Minister's home state, Gujarat, in elections in December, but lost significant number of seats, 16 to be precise. And on budget day, the news from Rajasthan wasn't very encouraging either, where BJP lost 2 parliamentary and 1 assembly seat to Congress in by-elections.
Therefore, I do not propose to make any further changes in the structure of the income tax for individuals.
न्यू इंडिया की नींव को सशक्त करने वाला बजट है.
बहुत ही शानदार बजट है.
देश के विकास का बजट है.
गरीबों के कल्याण का ये बजट है,
जो गांव, गरीब, मजदूर और किसान के कल्याण के बारे में सोच रहा है.
No big explosive announcements that might have been expected before an election.
जो मैजिशियन आते और कहते गिली 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 देखो हम यहाँ से खरगोश निकाले हैं.
I'd say election jumla, you know.
The verdict is not out as yet, but the battle for 2019 has already begun. Bureau Report, WION.
So lots of reactions coming in to that budget. Joining me this evening on the broadcast, Ron Sommers, American businessman, and joining us from the United States. He was the former president of the US-India Business Council. With us also this evening, Meera Sanyal, former CEO and chairman of the Royal Bank of Scotland. She joins us from Mumbai. Jasper Reed, investment expert, is with me in the studio, as is Parag Agarwal, the founder of Janajal, and Yashish Daya, CEO of PolicyBazaar.com, is joining us from Delhi. Jagdish Khattar, entrepreneur and former MD of Maruti Udyog Limited. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for joining us this evening on the broadcast. Jasper, I'll come to you first. there was a lot of expectations riding on this budget for people like me, salaried individuals. But there's also this big question of the elections coming up. Do you think that the budget has met the expectations of everyone who was sort of keyed into looking at the speech this morning?
That's a good question, Aisha. I think the everyone you're referring to, if you're Narendra Modi and the BJP, the everyone that will affect your vote coming up, possibly even this year, frankly. So,
yes.
This close to any election, it's all driven by electoral calculus, and effectively the policies are reverse engineered out of that. So I think it's no wonder that we've seen a bias towards the rural sector. The message was loud and clear coming out of Gujarat that there was disaffection there. So they need to shore that part of the voter base up. As far as sort of people like you go in the salaried classes, I suppose my observation here is that, there's been a lot of crimping today that there haven't been many SOPs or rewards. But I suppose the calculus there is that enough has been done so far to secure enough of that vote to get through this year or in 2019. So I think it's an expedient budget. I wouldn't necessarily call it a political budget, because I don't think there's anything in there that isn't sensible. And the last point I'd make, which is a very obvious point, is handsome is as handsome does. This is executionally tremendously intensive.
Absolutely.
And it's one thing to declare Namo care or Modi care. It's another thing to execute it. So let's wait and see.
And that has been a big question mark, Parag, on exercises like demonetization, like GST, that it wasn't executed correctly. If we look at some of the big takeaways from today's budget, they are execution based, as Jasper pointed out. So is the proof of the pudding going to lie in eating it?
So I think this budget is a really brave budget.
Okay.
The government could have really gone down a populist line, but they've chosen to walk a very tough path ahead. They've they've focused immensely on Bharat, which is nice. But I think my company and we work in Bharat. We understand what they need, and I think the aspirational Indian of today is not really looking for a dole or not looking for anything that they receive sitting back. They want to go out and work. They want to go out and they've educated themselves. They've upskilled themselves. They've gained certain vocational trainings. They want to really put themselves to work. They want to go out and buy all the good things by paying for it. And to do that, they need jobs. So there's got to be economic productivity, economic growth to be able to fuel those jobs. So I really think that simply widening the limit from 50 crores, for example, to 250 crores may not necessarily create jobs on the ground.
Right.
Because, a case in point here is China. They've created 64 million jobs in the last 5 years. So there is a method to the madness. There is a way to do it. But clearly, that does not seem to be coming through here. So people have been left to their own fate and to their own abilities to be able to go out, work, create jobs, and eventually, pay their taxes as they were paying all along.
All right. So let me go across to Jagdish Khattar on that note. Mr. Khattar, this is definitely something that the finance minister dwelled on today. He talked about generating jobs, that the unemployed are going to be key focus for the government going ahead in this year. As well as the rural economy, this healthcare plan is also focused on India's poor, on people who are living and have difficulty accessing medical facilities. At least secondary and tertiary medical care is going to be covered under this. Is this an important aspect for us to look at, given that the elections are coming up and the fact that the Prime Minister says as long as the rural areas are healthy, the rest of the country prospers as well? So in many ways, it does affect people like me sitting in urban centers.
You see, first of all, let me say that we, media and some people give too much of importance to the budget. I mean, for several years, the importance of budget is going down because it's all to do with the taxation and their books of account. Government takes decisions throughout the year. So that's one part of it. Second, I think as far as the excise sector is concerned, it has been taken over by the GST Council. The finance minister can do very little. As far as the direct taxation is concerned, again, the elbow room is much less because, the oil bonanza is gone. and they have really to manage everything. Now, in that context, as you are saying, yes, the stress areas were known. I think Mr. Jaitley knew about it as far as the rural is concerned, farmers are concerned, all other areas are concerned, senior citizens, and also this reduction in the taxation, corporate taxation. So they were known. Now, coming back, as far as rural is concerned, I am not, you see, my feeling is that in most of the areas, it's the state government which has to implement. As far as education, health, agriculture, all areas are of the state government. And state government is not in the picture at all. You know, I would have thought that the BJP could have made 2 or 3 state governments of theirs as model, implemented all those things, others would have followed. Coming back, as far as insurance and this is concerned, it's a very good step. But the problem is we don't have enough doctors. We don't have the facilities. Are they going to the private hospitals? You know, my apprehension is a person who is in a village goes to the local doctor and gets it done. Now he'll go to the district headquarters by road, and there if he doesn't get the facility from private hospitals, he may get disappointed. So net, I think execution will be an issue. Insurance is okay, but do we have enough doctors? I think we need to increase supply. India does not have a problem of creating a demand. We have a problem of meeting that demand. And that is where I think we'll have a problem.
All right, Meera Sanyal, fair points brought up by Mr. Khattar there. Execution, I think, is coming up repeatedly as an area of concern when it comes to big projects like this first step towards universal health care. All in all, though, what are your big takeaways from the budget? Given that it's 8:16 p.m., I think we've all had time to sort of chew the cud and figure out where exactly we stand on it.
So, you know, I would like to pick up from where Mr. Khattar left off, and he is right. Let's look at the supply of doctors. The estimation is that if India were to meet the WHO standards of 1 doctor per 1,000 people, we would need to add 100 new medical colleges per year. We've only in this budget talked about 24. So, you know, there is a big gap between what we say and what we intend and then what is executed. But what I would like to say is it's important to look at every budget in context. So let's look at the context of the last 4 years. And what we've seen is declining growth every year. We've seen declining investment every year. We've seen the gross fixed capital to GDP coming down every year. We've seen growth in agricultural sector coming down each year. And it seems to be a case of missed opportunities. If you look back to 2014, this government made a lot of promises. And I recall one speech by the Prime Minister where he talked about his mantra of less government, more governance.
Yes.
And he really articulated very beautifully what he meant by less governance. Now, if this government had only followed through on those things which he had said, we would have had a much better investment climate. If you look at today's budget, for example, we've had a lot of tinkering on direct taxes, no substantive reform, but 28 pages devoted to minor changes in direct taxes. At the same time, the government itself has appointed the Arvind Modi Committee to look at the direct tax code. It would have been wonderful if the finance minister had just stood up and said, look, I'm not making any substantive changes. The direct tax code is going to be introduced. That will vastly simplify direct taxation. And I think all of us, everyone who is a taxpayer, would have breathed a sigh of relief. Because as I think Jasper said, or one of your previous panelists said, Indians are not looking for handouts. I believe Indians are basically hard-working, honest people. We are happy to pay our taxes, provided it's a simple tax regimen. At the moment, it's so complicated. Even this long-term capital gains, which they've done today, I can tell you is going to be a nightmare. That means every taxman has to know the price of every share as of 31st January. I mean, how is this all going to work? It's just adding layer upon layer of complexity. You've added layer upon layer of taxes, of surcharges, of cesses. The whole thing has become so complex and so unwieldy that if you talk about ease of doing business, you have to hire an army of people to cope with GST, to cope with taxes, to cope with, you know, all the stuff that is there.
Fair enough.
Then more importantly, if if this government had just left things alone without, the demonetization shock and the badly implemented GST, we would be in a better place.
Okay, fine. I see, that you raised a number of points. It's given us a lot to talk about, and definitely, I think Parag is the one who brought that up, that Indians aren't shy of paying taxes as long as the process is simplified. Before I listen in or ask our viewers to listen to some reactions coming in on this story, let me go across also to Yashish Daya. You've been waiting patiently. Ron Somers, I'll be coming to you also in just a second. Let me go across to Yashish first. Yashish, do you agree with the overall sentiment so far that we've sort of established on the broadcast in the first 20 minutes, that on paper a lot of these suggestions do look ideal, but it really comes down to how much of it is going to be implemented and how much of it is going to get simplified for the people who are going to be ending up in the workforce, ending up paying those taxes?
So as far as I look at the insurance piece, I think having coverage for death, disease, disability for everyone, not just in the rural sector, is sort of critical for any economy, for any of the people to feel confident. And I think this first step on the health insurance side it moves the needle significantly. Of course, it's a budget. It can't do everything. It can't implement everything in one go, and we are a large country. But we have had RSBY for some time now, and RSBY was 35,000 rupees per individual. This is 1.5 lakh rupees at the family level. 5 lakh rupees at the family level. So this does of course, give people a lot of hope, but at the same time also sets the needle in terms of what is the right level of health cover as far as we are concerned. I've seen people with decent salaries taking 2 lakh rupee health cover. So I think from that notional perspective alone, bringing insurance into the forefront, as they did in the previous budget, where there was the 2 lakh rupee life insurance, the 1 lakh rupee personal accident cover, etc., which had come in. I think I feel good that this is a government that is putting at least insurance in the forefront. When I sit in the West, I see people far more confidently going about their daily lives because they have the social structure out there where in case things do go wrong, they're not left on the streets. And I think for our country also, people deserve that. Of course, it takes time. And that is what will give the middle and lower rungs of society that support structure, that look, if things do become very bad, then the government is there. That
there is a safety net in place. Perhaps that's not something that Indians can rely on. Ron Somers, we are going to get into what this means for foreign investors in India, but in more detail. But just to set the ball rolling on that, as far as your expectations from the Indian budget goes, what were the key takeaways, in your opinion, from Mr. Jaitley's speech today, from the areas that he touched upon? Given, of course, that India is looking for more and more investment, India is growing and is going to become the 5th largest economy shortly. Did all of those facts sort of match up, or did the speech rather match up to those facts?
Good morning from chilly Washington. Good evening in India. The budget was completely satisfactory from the standpoint of the American business community. Kudos to the government. What a steady, stay-the-course budget. We have now seen the days of the Big Bang budget reforms in the past. This was a very steady budget projected by Finance Minister Jaitley. In the end, let's remember, we've just come out of one of the deepest recessions in the history of modern man. Foreign investment will begin picking up. The American economy is beginning to bubble up. The European economy is doing well. Mr. Jaitley is correct to believe that FDI is going to be coming back to India in a big way. That's going to fund much of what he's after. So this was a very fiscally prudent budget, which is what American companies were hoping for. And I agree with the previous guest. What a brilliant move to be spending money on soft infrastructure, namely the National Health Protection Scheme, Modi Care, and touch the lives of so many hundreds of millions of families when someone from the family falls ill. Very important, because once this structure is in place, it will cause the entire supply chain of education and medical colleges and doctors getting trained into the system, technicians being trained into the system, and that social safety net that we just discussed is going to be the strength of this economy. It's the people of India that are going to drive this economy forward. So very satisfactory budget indeed.